Get started. So, what is this all about? What I want to do is over 30 days spend an hour coding. I might spend time doing research or design or thinking through different ideas outside of that hour, but I want to show you guys what can be realistically done within that time frame. Over 30 days, an hour a day. There's so many there are so many just ridiculous videos out there online where there is just so much work before there's so much setup, and someone will build, say, Airbnb in 8 hours, which is just insane. Those kinds of videos are not realistic. They are just showing building some superficial front end that is either querying some already made API, or just mocking a bunch of data. We're going to build a real app. We're going to build a real app that you can use. And ideally today, within the first hour, we're going to have something up, and it's not going to be pretty, but there will be something at least that you, the viewer, can look at and play around with. So this is, I'll show you my whole development process, and there won't be the same fanfare that you would find in those kinds of channels that I'm talking about, but what you'll be getting is real and raw. So let's get started. Today, not today, now for the next few days, the next month, what I want to build is a tool for those with ADHD or highly creative people that find themselves being pulled in all sorts of different directions, or those that have kind of difficulty managing the day-to-day chaos of all the things they need to work on. So I guess the one-liner is a to-do app for those with ADHD or personal organizer. I don't have an idea of exactly what this is going to look like, but I do have a lot of things that I want to put into this. And the MVP that I'm looking at building today is a simple single page app with a little Pomodoro timer. If you don't know what that is, we'll explain it as we begin developing. So what I want to start off with is create React app. And there's actually a template. I want to use TypeScript. I haven't used TypeScript in a few years. I've been using Flow, and TypeScript and Flow are tools for static analysis. So I'm looking up the command to start create React app with a TypeScript template, and it looks like it's right here. So that wasn't too bad. I think I need the npx prefix, create React app. What do I want to call this? I don't want to just call it to do. I do have a product name for this, but I don't want to make that public yet because I haven't bought the domain yet, and the domain's expensive, and I don't want it to get more expensive. We'll just call it, yeah, fuck it. We'll just call it to do. We can rename it at any point, so that's fine. So this is going to be doing some work. Might be a little slow since I'm streaming. I guess what we can also do, I want to deploy this to Vercel, and I do believe Vercel does support create React apps. So Vercel is actually what I use to host my coachmatt.io website. Wow, this is slow. So, right, so I guess I can create a new project here. Thanks for joining. I'm looking to build a to-do app for those with ADHD over the next 30 days by programming an hour a day. There's not going to be any crazy fanfare. This is going to be as real as it gets in terms of development. Browse all templates. import. Okay, I'll just import a Git repository then. I'll wait for this to finish. I guess I can make a repository. So we are literally just getting started. I am on a 5-year-old laptop right now. I'm trying out developing on my MacBook instead of my desktop machine. Okay. I'll just call this to do here as well. Make it private, I guess. Maybe I'll make it public later. Okay, so I've been developing on this machine. I already have my IDE and GitHub set up, of course. Still waiting for Create React App to set up. By the way, if you're using Create React App in an interview, it's probably a good idea to run this command before the interview actually gets started. So you just have a blank app ready. Okay, it looks like everything is downloading. Now it's just going to be building a few things. Maybe. Okay, where is this? To do, I can at least open my IDE into that directory. Get something going. Okay. So I'm not looking to really get into a design discussion at all. We really are just going to be focusing on ops and some pretty basic functionality today. Ops as in getting the site up and running. So this is my own personal portfolio site for my coaching services. I launched this on Vercel. It's free, which is really cool. It's really fast, or at least the files are served up really fast. The website itself is not very fast, and there's some work to be done to improve that later. Okay. 232 seconds. Wow. Okay, we have a source directory. And I haven't written TypeScript in so long, but shouldn't be anything too different from Flow. I'm never a fan of all this crap that gets included here in the beginning. So let me just delete this logo. I'll delete that, delete that. Delete these lines. Okay. Yeah, so now the reality of development sinks in. Things happen. I don't know why this is so incredibly slow. Oh, OBS is taking up a lot of CPU. Okay. Well, I can figure that out later. Maybe there's some settings I can apply. So Subtask is another app that I looked at, and I like some of the elements here, but I overall I don't really like the execution. I do like this priority matrix here. The low effort, high value. Yeah, I think another matrix is like urgency versus importance. Okay. Versal, import a Git repository. I did make a repository, but I don't want to import it yet because what Versal does is when you import the repository, it'll look at the way it's structured and infer if it's a like a Next.js app or a Create React app and set itself up accordingly. My TypeScript file is up and running. Okay. This is absolutely insane how long this is taking. Okay, well, do I at least have... Okay, I have a git ignore, and I have all these things here, so I can make my first commit and maybe save a few things while this is doing whatever it's doing. What is it even doing? So Yarn is doing some work. Okay, it looks like it finally finished. So Yarn start is starting the development server. What I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually push up the start code, not do anything to it, and then we can, right. And then we can make our changes and push them up to our site. So I don't have a domain yet, but Versa will give us some ugly domain that we can use in the meantime. What are we doing? Let's make our first commit. Okay. Okay. So it looks like I got those changes and I removed the logo file before it was able to finish the first commit, so I didn't even have to make a commit to include that change. That's funny. Hopefully this doesn't take forever. Maybe while that's running I can get this pushed up to my GitHub repository. Push an existing repository. Yeah, that's what I want to do. And then this, and then this. So now, if I refresh over here, we should see this. And then hopefully our... Yeah, so getting started with the Create React app, everything's up. What I can do now is I can... Missing repository. Yeah, let's add another repository. So what I'm doing now is I'm setting up Versal to host this repository, and we haven't done anything to it yet. I should have created this under my CoachMat.io domain, or yeah, I'll move it later if I want to. Two-factor. Come on, you. Okay, good. All right. So now we have this one. I'll import to do. And our Create React app. How long is that going to take to update? Is finally running. Sweet. I don't want to create a team. This is all free. Create a team. Skip. I'll capitalize this at least to do. You shouldn't need to modify any of these settings. These should all work from with the defaults if you haven't done anything interesting. Okay, so the name has to be lowercase. Then why did you let me type uppercase characters? So that's going to take a minute, and we have our local machine running. Did it give us a domain yet? No, it'll probably give us a domain once the app is launched. And the way the Vercel gets set up initially is that you will have, anytime you merge your changes into your master branch, that'll automatically get deployed, assuming there are no errors in the build process. Okay, so I did outline some notes, high-level ideas for various widgets that I would like to have, a Pomodoro timer, something to maybe set your routine, say I want to work for these hours and then relax for these hours and maybe exercise here, just some persistent reminder of where you are within that, that schedule throughout your day, maybe a journal, an idea log. I have tons of random ideas throughout the day, and simply organizing those can be a full-time job on its own. You just deployed a new project to Vercel. Okay. Go to dashboard, and the dashboard should show us the URL deployment. Okay. So for anyone watching, you can actually visit this URL. Visit. And see our beautiful app. Right. At some point, I'll set this up with a legitimate domain name so we don't have this ugly hash here. But our app is out in the wild. And how long have we been recording? 20 minutes. And the first 5 minutes, I was making sure everything was working. And then another 5 minutes was waiting for a Create React app to actually start working. But that's, I think, the fault there is on my end, because I can probably tweak OBS, my streaming software, to not hog so many resources. Okay. Right. So I think now we can simply forget about ops. We have this, well, I'll leave the deployment tab open so we can see that when it gets updated. But what we can focus on now is actually coding for the next, say, how long? Probably, yeah, 45 minutes. So thanks for your patience so far. So, right, I did have this notion of widgets. So I'm imagining this app having a bunch of widgets that you can move around. Maybe widgets will have some kind of context, such as this widget is only for to-do items or notes for this project. Maybe a person can have different projects. For me, one of those projects might be personal items. Another one might be this to-do app itself. Another one might be work for making various videos on my YouTube channel. Yeah, you can break it up however you want, really. But I'm aiming for this to be like a tool to manage all of the kind of small things you want to remember across all domains in a person's life. So work and play and home life. Okay, I feel like I'm talking in circles. Let's build something. So, right, I was mentioning that because I wanted to talk about what I want to build next. I want to have introducing that concept of widgets. I'm imagining these widgets, maybe some basic windowing system where you can actually found a really cool. Let me look at my recent stars. I found a really cool. Whoa. I found a really cool project which might be good to use. It looked like the last commit hadn't been made. The last commit was in March or something. Really old. And by the way, if it feels like I'm taking forever to jump into the code, I'm actually still going really fast. If you're looking to build something beyond like a trivial project, you're probably not going to want to jump in literally right away. My stars. Yeah, you want to. There's definitely a trade-off between kind of thinking ahead of time and that saving you time down the road. So React Mosaic. This was a really cool, a really intriguing project that I saw. So you can see a little GIF here. Maybe having a windowing system, something like this. I think the one question that comes to mind is that if we have something like this and then we resize the parent window that contains all of this, then what does that mean? If you spend a lot of time moving these windows around, then that layout probably won't look good if you shrink the window down quite a lot. So maybe you could keep things even more simple and just have like different columns, or simply just have one column and have all of the widgets like stacked on top of each other. But right now, I'm not going to even think about this windowing system. I'm not going to think about syncing data between the client and server. All we are doing is building one widget and getting just minimal functionality going. So once again, without further ado, let's write some code. Maybe I'll even have a new folder. Yeah, sure. A new folder for widgets. And then maybe a new folder inside of widgets for the Pomodoro widget. And then a new file in there. I'll make this just an index.js. So I could make a pomodoro.js and then have an index.js file, import that. The nice thing about index.js, let's just, okay. So it looks like, does this need to import React? Because there was an update to React where you don't need to explicitly import React anymore. It looks like that change propagated. I'm a little doubtful because, okay, yeah, you don't need to import React anymore. There's more cleanup to do, but I'll worry about that later. Let's get something going. Pomodoro widget. Yeah, I'll call it widget. Oh boy, that's slow. So, yeah, this isn't doing anything interesting yet. Pomodoro widget. Let's get rid of this. Update CSS. We don't have the logo anymore. I'm not doing any media queries. I never was a fan of media queries. I feel like the layout should be determined by the size of the component and not the size of the screen. More on that later as we build out our widgets. Let's change this app header to global styles for the body tag. Don't want min height. Don't want this. Don't have this, and then yeah, it's good enough. Okay, so Pomodoro timer, the idea is that at each point, well, to start, you do 25 minutes. Yeah, let's look at the Pomodoro technique. I didn't spend a ton of time looking up resources. This is not a great... There's a lot of stuff in here that I don't think is relevant. But with Pomodoro, the idea is that you start doing something, you pick something to focus on, and then for 25 minutes, and that time can be customized later. For 25 minutes, you don't do anything but that one task, and then you take a break, and that time, of course, is customizable as well. Typically, maybe 5 minutes makes sense. After 4 Pomodoros, then maybe you take a longer break. So what I'm thinking, the flow here is we have a timer, and that timer can have a work time and then break time. And the break time can be short or long break time. So some components that we'll need to render the time, of course, and not in the number of milliseconds. We want it to be human readable. So like say 2430 as opposed to, you know, however, I don't know how many milliseconds that would be. So that's pretty straightforward. And some buttons to control that. Yeah, I think I'm really not going to think about the UI at all. Or improving the UI at all. I'm just going to get minimum functionality. One question for me is, what do we want with flows? Do we want to be able to start out with a break? Or do we want to be able to... Okay, so maybe I'll keep it simple, because maybe you already were doing Pomodoro somewhere else, and then you come to this and you want to... I'll give the user control. So the user will have control, and at any point, they can... Right, so they can... the default state is not running. And the actions they can take is start a timer. So that'll be work or short break or long break. And then if we're running, then we can pause or reset. Or, well, not reset, stop. And then maybe later there's settings, customize times. And then logic to suggest next time, e.g. you should take a short break now. Okay. And I guess I'll just give the button a different background color if that's like the suggested action. So that's all simple enough. So let's say const, just having some default configuration. Work time is going to be 60 times, well, 1,000 milliseconds times 60. So we're at a minute times 25. Let's just make it a little bit easier. Short break time is going to be min times 5, I guess. Long break time. Okay, that's good enough for now. And right now we're just going to have client-side state. There's not going to be any saving data to local storage or some other service. This is just going to be really simple. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. What I'm doing is I'm building a real product without any kind of fanfare and having a bunch of work behind the scenes. This is how development in the real world looks. Okay. And apologies, I'm newer to streaming, so when I talk, sometimes I lose my train of thought. So running, set running. Actually, I want to make this a class component. And the reason why is because our I feel like when you okay, so import component. Oh my god. And the lag that you're seeing is actually on my machine. I need to tweak some settings to get this running a little more smoothly. Yeah, so with state management, if you're using hooks, if you have, in my opinion, if you have like more than 2 hooks, or if you're doing really anything kind of non-trivial with managing your state, then things get really gnarly really quickly. So sometimes I like to just fall back to the old-fashioned class-based approach. So and then maybe our state will have a start time. And then we'll also want to know what kind of time we are using. So maybe instead of having the data in this shape, we can have const times equals, is that the best name for it? Renaming's easy. Okay, so we have maybe a duration, and then this for the work time will be min times 25. A label work, right. And then I'll give this an ID. Work. You'll see why. If you aren't sure why I'm doing this, you'll see in a moment. Short break. Short break. Long break. So min times 5, and then what was a long break? 20 30 minutes. Who cares? We can tweak all that later. And now this might look a little funny. This might look redundant. It kind of is. But it's okay. I'm not even being consistent with my IDs. Okay, so now we can have a current so the start time is going to be the time that the timer started, and then what I want to call the current state that we are in. So current time ID. It's not a good name. And that'll be null for now because it's not running. Okay, maybe I'll have a helper function is running. Return boolean, well, not this dot state dot current time ID. So if our current time ID is truthy, if that's set, then we are running. Let's say if not, this dot is running. Return running. Otherwise, let's give us some options. Once again, I'm not concerned with the UI at all. Well, I could even, I guess, map over the different. I'll put it. I'll hard code it all for now. On click equals. Let's say start timer, and then that'll take a current time ID. Okay, I'm not going to write too much logic. I want to get this rendering again. Okay, so work, and then short break, long break. We have a Chrome somewhere right there. Yep, as expected. Those are all there. Lovely. So the thing about using timers, you might be inclined to say, do something like a set interval and have that, say, remove 1 second from your time whenever. But the thing about this is that you're going to get massive clock drift. On best case scenario, you're probably going to get maybe like 1 to 3% clock drift. But if you're on, say, a machine that's really struggling like this, then you might even get more than that. Because what set interval is doing is that it's going to call this callback. Is that set interval? Yeah. So it's going to call this callback, I guess, at most. Yeah, it's going to wait at least 1,000 milliseconds to call this callback again. Now I'm doubting myself, but I'm pretty sure that's how that works. And even if there's no clock drift here, imagine you close your laptop and then open it back up. Then that time is lost too. That time won't be tracked if you're using the set interval approach. So it's much safer and easier to reason about if you simply record the time that you started your timer, and And that's what we're going to do here. So we'll have a start timer, current time ID. Yeah, and we'll just say this dot set state. This will be pretty easy. Start time date dot now and current time ID. Okay. And then on click equals. So I could I'm repeating myself here with these 3 different buttons, and I'm okay with that because I'm probably going to change the markup for these buttons later, and there's only 3 of them. It's not like we're going to have 10 or so. This dot start timer work. What are you complaining about? Why did you add that? Okay. So on click equals this dot start timer short break. On click equals this dot start timer long break. And I guess to test this, we can change our excuse me. If we want to test this, then we can change the minute here to be something shorter, so we don't have to wait actually 25 minutes to make sure that the timer behaves as we want. Okay, so we did have an idea of, I guess now's a good time to commit. I'm not creating any branches yet. I'm just doing this all on master. Pomodoro widget has buttons. So in terms of the maturity of how I'm making these commits and doing commit messages and branching strategy or lack thereof, that's definitely not very fancy right now. And that's okay, because we started this project just now. Okay. Pomodoro. We have. Okay. I am just going to stop talking for a little while and get some development done. I think that'll help me focus. Yeah, this is fancy, but the naming feels really wonky to me. So I'll just do that. And now pause will be a little bit more involved because well, I think maybe first we can get our time display working. I'm not going to make a commit just for that. Okay. So let's have okay. So if we're running, then we want to render our time. Right? So const, I guess, clock text. Maybe I'll make a helper function for that. And this will, yeah, let's just say if and I always forget, is there like a one-liner? Is there a one-line function to format some duration to minute, second? Okay. Or are people just writing this out by hand? Okay. Yeah, so they're just coding it up. Okay, that's nice. AD 0, set seconds. That substring seems a little funny, but I guess it works. Yeah, fuck it. I'll just write it myself. Well, let's start really simple and just render the number of milliseconds. So we'll say not duration remaining equals, and then let's say, excuse me, is going to be date dot now minus this dot state dot start time. Well, that's elapsed actually. Yeah. And then remaining equals times indexed at this dot state dot current time ID minus elapsed. And in case there's any funny business, let's just have math.max 0. We don't want to show any negative times. That's just weird. Okay. Right, so clock text is this dot clock text. So we are not worrying about font or anything. This is just really, really basic. Nan. Uh-oh. Okay. We are setting the start time, right? Whoops. Not view page source. So I love using the React developer tools to figure out what the heck is going on. It's probably some super obvious mistake I am making. Okay, so we are running date.now minus this.state.start time. And that should work. Times index at this.state.current time ID. This is an object. That's the problem, obviously. And then it was dot duration. Okay, and this isn't ticking at all. This isn't updating over time. I guess the proper thing to do would be to maybe even have another component that just renders the time so that this whole component doesn't need to update each second. And do we want to do that? Do we want to put forth the effort and get that working? Yeah. How are we doing on time? We got maybe another 10 minutes. I'm not gonna do it yet. I'll refactor this maybe as this component gets a little bit larger. All right, so let's say tick this dot force update. Yeah, it's interesting doing this with other people watching because I feel a little more pressure to actually get stuff done, and I don't want to spend a ton of time refactoring. Want to be more careful about how I prioritize my time, really, which is good. Okay, so then what we can do when we're running, we can have an interval. Okay, so a few things going on here. So I did say set interval was not great to use, but we're using it here to simply force an update. We're not using it to do any kind of math and subtract from our elapsed time. We are deriving the elapsed time from our state. So if this browser hangs for 20 seconds and then starts running again, we haven't lost any time in our tracker. So that's cool. And I also made this an arrow function because this will help it preserve the lexical this here. Otherwise, I would need to say dot bind this, which I think is a little funny. That's a style thing. You can decide whatever makes the most sense to you. So we have that, and then when we stop the timer, we can say clear interval, this dot interval. I'm also not putting this interval in the state because this value shouldn't really, the React component doesn't really depend on this value. This value is kind of independent from the rendering of the React component. In that case, I can create member properties on the class instance instead of dumping everything in state, which is also something that's a little bit more awkward to do in a functional component. Okay, so now we are ticking every second. So we should see that working. And then you'll see, this most significant number changes a little bit because our set interval isn't always going to take exactly 1,000 milliseconds to run. Okay. So now, what we can do is create our clock text function. We don't have pause working yet. So 14.9, yeah, so that the times appear to be correct. Okay, it's going to be a little tricky to get a lot done in the 1 hour, so I'll have to come with a clear goal in mind. But we did actually get this deployed, which is cool. Right, so let's get our clock text rendering. Const, let's start with the highest significant value first. Minutes, and the min up here, okay, that's all capitalized, that's capitalized, equals, this will be elapsed math.floor elapsed over 1,000, well, over min. And then const seconds will be elapsed modulo min math.floor that over 1,000, I believe. And this isn't going to be quite correct, but it'll be more correct than what we've had so far. I think that's right. Whoops. Cool. So now if we were using set interval to remove a second, then it would be easier to have pause implemented. But we'll figure it out. So the thing that we need to be aware of now is that we want to make sure our so when the seconds, let's say the minutes can be 1 digit, but the seconds should probably. So we're gonna get to a case where, imagine our min is 4 and our seconds is 4. We're gonna output something like that. So in which case, what we want to do is let's just convert these to string right away. And I've already written very similar code a few times, so Maybe I'll test this. If second.length is less than 2, second equals, nope. We want to pad it with a 0 on the left side. And then that does it. So we have a little Pomodoro timer. We don't have pause implemented, but that's working. Maybe we can get pause in a couple minutes, but okay. Let's just push that up to master now. Okay. Oh, it's main, not master. Yeah. Yeah. So I ask a very similar interview question, so I have a very clear idea of how I want to handle this. Let's just say, yeah, elapsed 0. And then when we start the timer, stop the timer. Actually, let's not modify elapsed here. Let's assume it's already 0. This will make sense in a moment. Get clock text. Okay. So, so this will actually be plus this dot state dot elapsed. Start timer date dot now. Okay, actually, so if we pause, I guess you would also need an additional state running or paused. In which case our isRunning function. Yeah, so this is the thing. When you add features, then you kind of end up refactoring. You can definitely end up refactoring what you're doing. So we'll say this dot state dot running. What do they call it? Running? Start timer, stop timer. Running false. Running true. Elapsed as date.now minus the start time. Okay, let if, okay, yeah, const. So we can have maybe a pause timer. Okay. And then when we start, the start timer will be reset. Do I want this to be toggle paused? Maybe I'll have like an unpause. Or maybe I can even do this.start timer, this.state.current time ID. Maybe I'll get some music for next time. I think that'll be good. Okay. So I think I just need to hook it up and we're good to go. I have pause and unpause, so okay. I'm somewhat confident that that will work. Okay. Right. So this is already over 100 lines, which is a little bit longer than I would like to see for a component. Okay. So clock text. Okay, so now a few things are changing. So we want to render that state when we're not running, when we're paused. So this will maybe just be if this dot state dot current time ID. And then now our get clock text cannot assume that yeah, so maybe if this dot state dot current time ID, and then we can't assume that the stopwatch is running, so we'll just say we can't assume the timer is running. If this dot state dot running, lapsed is, you add those together. Okay. So now oh, there's two pause buttons. Yeah, right. So I guess we could stop it from ticking. No. Okay. So our running, we want to have it start time, running. I know what the problem is. I'm just trying to come up with a tidy fix for this. So we can't just be looking at the start time continuously. What we want to do, I guess, is if oh man. Okay. So let elapsed if the state is running elapsed is date.now minus this.state dot start time. Okay. So that works. We've got a simple Pomodoro timer. There's no UI. I think next time, tomorrow, what we can do is focus on maybe packaging this up into its own widget. Think a little bit more about how all these widgets are going to fit together. Not implement a windowing system because that's a huge commitment, but think about maybe how that might fit in. Maybe we can support adding widgets to the page and just render them all on a list. I think that works. And then maybe we can get another one or two other widgets this week. And as those widgets start taking shape, we can think more about the shared data model between these widgets, because these aren't all just going to be completely independent widgets. We want them to be aware of each other in some way and have like a context between them. So yeah, I think that was pretty decent for a first day. We've got our let me commit what we have. Pausing. Okay, so that'll be live in just a moment. And we will see our beautiful Pomodoro timer up on this domain. Thanks for watching. I'll figure out a time to do this regularly.